My father's name lights up on my phone for the fifth time. I watch it vibrate quietly across my glass desk. Its smooth, polished surface a stark contrast to the scarred oak table where I used to do homework as a child. Outside, the skyline of Brighton City sparkles in the afternoon sun, 5 stories beneath my apartment and 800 miles away from the Maple Glen house where I first learned how to make myself small. I hover my thumb over the ignore button again. The leather of my chair creaks as I shift. Then, silence. 3 seconds later, a new email notification slides across the screen. From Charles Whitaker. Subject: Your sister needs you. Last chance. My stomach clenches as I click it open, the lines bleeding together. Except one, bold and clear at the bottom. Tessa's wedding is the most important day of her life. Be there, or consider all future support gone. Next, a voicemail alert. I tap play and set my phone on speaker. Isla, it's your father. His voice fills the room, firm, unwavering, still commanding after all these years. I don't know what point you're trying to make, but this is enough. Your sister's wedding is in 2 weeks, and the events start this weekend. If you can't put aside your issues for her big moment, then you can forget about any support from this family. Your mother is beside herself. Call me. A bitter laugh escapes me. I walk to the closet and pull out a framed diploma hidden behind my winter coats. The gold embossing catches the light. Isla Camille Whitaker, Bachelor of Science, Data Science, summa cum laude. 3 years it's been collecting dust instead of hanging on my walls, because old instincts die hard. My phone buzzes again. A text from my mother. Please call. Your father is growing impatient. I glance at the desk calendar. Tessa's wedding extravaganza, underlined in angry red ink. 14 days of ceremonies, parties, and endless photo ops for the golden child's perfect day. I open my banking app. $138,139.76. Enough. More than enough. I'll never need a cent from them again. But they don't know that yet. A memory surfaces, 3rd grade, clutching a report card with 5 perfect A's. My mother, barely glancing up from her magazine. That's nice, honey. That same night, the living room echoing with cheers for Tessa's participation ribbon in the school play. Did you hear how clear her voice was? She stole the show. My dad beamed. I sat, unseen, on the stairs. Sophomore year, my science fair project won first place for analyzing the local water supply. My parents' chairs sat empty. They'd gone to Tessa's soccer game. She scored 1 goal. They talked about it for weeks. Principal Nash handed me the ribbon. Your parents must be so proud. I nodded. That hollow feeling? It had become familiar. Senior year, I received a thick envelope from St. James University. Acceptance and full scholarship. My hands trembled reading it. That's so far away, my mother murmured, brows furrowed. Tessa might feel less than going to a community college. My father didn't even look up from the paper. We've already decided. You'll stay close. End of discussion. The quiet war that followed. I convinced them to let me live in the dorms at Midwest State, just 20 minutes away, for better focus. They thought I gave in. 2 weeks later, I boarded a bus to Brighton City with 2 suitcases and a forged paper trail. Fake community college enrollment. A dorm assignment that didn't exist. My first real act of independence. Now I stare into the bathroom mirror. The woman who looks back? She's not invisible anymore. She's confident, successful, unbent by the hunger for their approval. Back at my desk, I trace the embossed name on the diploma. Isla Camille Whitaker Product Analyst. 6-figure salary. No longer unseen. My laptop glows. I open the airline site and begin typing. I book a first-class ticket back to Maple Glen. It's time they finally see me, I whisper to the reflection in my black screen. The glow of the darkened laptop screen fades as I zip my designer suitcase shut, each item placed with meticulous care. I slip my diploma between two folded sweaters, letting the embossed seal peek slightly through the layers. A quiet smile curls across my lips as I imagine their expressions, the moment they realize who I've become. Have you ever had to hide your success from the very people who should have been proud of it? What would you do if your family only saw your worth when they needed something? This homecoming? It's going to teach them a lesson they never saw coming. The tires of my rental car crunch across the gravel driveway, familiar from 100 childhood bike rides and barefoot summers. I park behind a row of floral delivery vans and step out. The front porch of the old Maple Glen house has been transformed into something out of a bridal magazine. White roses cascading from urns, ivory fabric wound elegantly around the railings. My mother opens the door before I can knock. Her hair is the exact shade of honey blonde she always insisted on, not a strand out of place. Isla. Finally. Her hug is rigid, too formal, like she's checking a box. So, you've decided to support your sister. Inside, the air smells like vanilla candles and new paint. The living room has become a staging ground. Piles of programs, bags of decorations, boxes labeled "Welcome Gifts." From the study, my father appears, adjusting his reading glasses. There's no hug, not even a smile, just a clipboard shoved into my hands. Good, you're here. These programs need folding, guest bags too. Tessa wants them ready by 4. Dad, I just got in. And now you can be useful. Tessa's voice cuts through from upstairs, shrill and sharp. No, I said, cascading arrangement, not gathered. This is literally a disaster. She spots me and raises a finger, the universal wait gesture. Do you understand? This is the most important day of my life. When she finally comes down, she air kisses the air near my cheek. Thank God. The caterer's threatening to walk out, and Mom's completely lost with the seating chart. Nice to see you too, Tessa. Elliot's planning something for the reception. It has to coordinate. No surprises. Elliot, her fiancé, my mother supplies. You'll meet him at dinner. He's absolutely wonderful. A brilliant investor, Tessa cuts in. Crypto millionaire. Right. Of course he is. Elliot Harper arrives precisely at 6:30, bottle of wine in hand, smile too perfect. He's taller than I expected, the kind of polished, commercial-ready attractive that feels practiced. His handshake is too firm. So, this is the elusive sister. The computer genius tucked away in the big city. Product analyst, I correct. Not quite as mysterious. Sounds intense. He winks. I've got friends working on an AI-based trading platform. Cutting-edge stuff. We should talk shop sometime. Over dinner, he dominates the conversation, spinning tales of crypto investments and high-level opportunities. My father hangs on every word like scripture. What exchanges do you typically use? I ask casually during a lull. For a split second, his smile falters. Oh, a mix? Mostly private platforms? Exclusive access through my network. Interesting. And your company's based where? We're decentralized, he answers smoothly. That's the beauty of blockchain. I've got partners in Zurich, Singapore, Dubai. My father shoots me a warning glare. Isla, not everyone wants a business lecture at dinner. Later that evening, digging through drawers in my father's study to find the wedding programs, I stumble on something else. Refinancing paperwork for the house. Dated 3 weeks ago. The house that was nearly paid off now carries a substantial new mortgage. Muffled voices carry from the dining room. Charles, are you sure about this second mortgage? My mother's voice trembles. I freeze. That's our retirement, too. Elliot guaranteed a 20% return. Minimum. But $15,000 is... You wouldn't understand investments like this. My father cuts her off. This is how real wealth is built. I press my back to the wall, my brain calculating. Risk factors, financial red flags, the suspicious vagueness of Elliot's pitch, second mortgage, family savings, inheritance, all of it flowing into a too-good-to-be-true opportunity. He's a fraud. He's a fraud, Aunt Valerie whispers, barely loud enough to hear. We're standing in the backyard, pretending to admire the wedding florals she arranged. The tension is thick beneath the scent of peonies. You see it too? I ask. She nods, her gray eyes sharp, so much like mine. Your father won't listen. Said I'm just jealous of his financial savvy. She trails off, but her message is clear. She knows. And she's scared. Jealous of his success, Aunt Valerie muttered, shaking her head. That's what your father said about me last month when I voiced concern. But Isla, listen. Mr. Wilson, just a few houses down, lost everything in one of those exclusive opportunities Elliot keeps raving about. It was last year. Sounded suspiciously similar. My chest tightened. And when I heard Elliot pitching those 20% return rates like gospel, she sighed. It all started sounding very familiar. Isla, a voice called from across the fence line. I turned to see Mr. Donnelly, my old high school science teacher, waving a hand above the hydrangeas. His face hadn't changed much, still kind, with that quiet wisdom in his eyes. I've been following your career, he said. That data science program at St. James was no joke, one of the best in the country. I froze. How did you? He chuckled. Unlike your parents, some of us paid attention. Aunt Valerie reached out, patting my hand. For the first time since I'd stepped foot back in this town, I felt seen. That night, we gathered in the living room. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the bridal magazines scattered on the coffee table. My father sat, predictably, behind his newspaper, only lowering it when I cleared my throat. Dad. Mom. I think we need to talk about Elliot. My father didn't look up. What about him? I took a deep breath. I've noticed inconsistencies in his investment stories. The way he describes his company, his returns, it doesn't line up with how actual crypto markets function. My mother let out a dramatic sigh. Honestly, Isla, must everything be about tearing people down? You've always been so jealous of Tessa's happiness. This isn't jealousy, I replied, voice level. It's math. What he's promising, 20% guaranteed returns, private platforms with no oversight. It doesn't add up. My father finally looked at me. His face had shifted from neutral to stern. You don't understand business at this level, Isla. Not everything fits into your neat little spreadsheets. Just then, the front door swung open. Tessa floated in with Elliot by her side, glowing with post-wedding prep chaos. They both stopped short at the tension in the room. What's going on? Tessa asked, eyes darting between our faces. Your sister has concerns about Elliot's business, Dad said, his tone clipped. Tessa's expression crumpled. Are you serious? You disappear for 3 years and now show up just to ruin the one good thing in my life? Elliot pulled her close, an arm sliding around her shoulder with practiced ease. It's okay, babe, he said gently. Some people just don't understand innovation. I looked at them all. Defensive, dismissive, blindly loyal. And in that moment, it hit me. They didn't want truth. They wanted the illusion that made Tessa shine and Elliot look like royalty. The invisible daughter sees everything, but no one wants to look. Later that evening, I curled into the corner booth at Mayberry's Cafe, the same cracked vinyl seat where I used to study calculus. Now, my laptop glowed with open tabs, business registries, shell company trackers, forum threads, social media accounts. 3 names stared back at me: Ethan Lewis, Edward Lambert, Elliot Lawson, now going by Elliot Harper. Same man, same smile. Different names, different lives left in ruin. I sipped my coffee, the bitter taste grounding me as the data threads wove themselves into one undeniable truth. He's done this before, and he'll do it again. Need a refill, hun? I glanced up. Margie, the same waitress from a decade ago, stood at my elbow, eyes narrowing at my screen. That face. Wait. She leaned in. My cousin got scammed by a guy who looked just like that. Went by Edward something. My stomach dropped. Lambert? That's it, she whispered, setting the coffee pot down hard. Said he was an investor. Vanished a week before their wedding. Took everything. Savings, jewelry, even her hope. A few hours later, I sat across from Karen, a woman in her 50s whose trembling hands wrapped around her mug like a lifeline. Her voice shook. I thought I was special, she whispered. He made me feel seen. Like I finally mattered. She slid a folder across the table. Inside, photographs, bank statements, and a police report that went nowhere. Her jaw tightened. He disappeared 3 days before the wedding. Took 60 grand and my mother's heirloom ring. I flipped through the papers. Each document, each detail, confirmed what I already knew. He was a predator in a tailored suit. There were 3 other victims named in the report. 3 different states. Same pattern. I packed up the evidence. 5 days to the wedding. The knot in my stomach tightened like a fist. As I stepped through the front door of the Maple Glen house, my mother's voice rang out from the hallway. Where have you been? She didn't wait for an answer. The floral arrangements need final approval, and Tessa's in hysterics over the place cards. I glanced at my watch. It was barely noon. I was doing something important. More important than your sister's wedding? She snapped, thrusting a checklist into my hands. Your father says your attitude is becoming a problem. A familiar weight settled onto my shoulders. The weight of being seen only when it's convenient, only when I'm useful. But I'd seen the truth, and I had the proof. Whether they were ready to hear it was another matter. You've barely helped at all. The words fall like a stone, heavy and expected. That old familiar weight settles squarely on my shoulders. The role I've always played. The invisible daughter, now visible only when something needs fixing. Or someone needs blaming. I find Tessa in the dining room, surrounded by crumpled tissues and sample place settings. Her eyes are rimmed with mascara smudges, lips pulled tight with frustration. The calligrapher messed up the font, she snaps, holding up a place card like it's a crime scene. Where were you? I've been texting for hours. I check my phone. 3 texts. The first one sent 40 minutes ago. You always do this, Tessa says, her voice rising with practiced drama. You vanish when people need you, and show up just in time to steal attention. The accusation lands with pinpoint precision. For 23 years, I've been both not enough and too much, too quiet, too smart, too ambitious. Always falling short of expectations I never agreed to. I'm trying to help you, I say. By asking questions about Elliot's. You just can't stand that I found someone amazing, she interrupts, voice climbing higher, while you're off in Brighton doing whatever boring job it is that pays your rent. I swallow the truth. The boring job that pays twice what she's ever made. Instead of retaliating, I pick up a place card and examine the font. I can call the calligrapher, fix it. Dad already did, she mutters. At least he supports me. Later, the living room falls into silence as I lay out my evidence. Printed screenshots, bank records, police reports, and Karen Delgado's signed statement. My parents sit frozen on the couch. Tessa perches on the edge of an armchair, face pale. Elliot stands beside the fireplace, expression calm and controlled. This is clearly a case of mistaken identity, he says smoothly, though his smile doesn't quite reach his eyes. I have one of those faces. People get confused. I keep my voice steady. 3 women, 3 states, same pattern, same man, different name each time. I push one of Karen's photos forward. Right before each wedding, he disappeared. With the money. Isla, my father warns. His voice sharpens. This is absurd. Dad, look at the documents. Look at the timeline. Look at the way it all matches. I've never seen this woman in my life. Elliot cuts in, gesturing dismissively toward the folder. Tessa shoots to her feet. I can't believe you'd go this far just to ruin my happiness. Her voice breaks, tears sliding down her cheeks. You've always been jealous of me. The word hits like a slap. Jealous. I stare at her. I'm trying to protect you. By ambushing my fiancé with lies? She snatches the papers from the coffee table, crumpling them in her fist. Tessa, listen to me, I plead, stepping toward her. The second mortgage, Mom's retirement fund, Dad's investment. It's all gone into this guy's scheme. That's enough, my father barks, rising. His face is flushed. You need to leave, right now. Elliot places a gentle hand on his shoulder. Charles, it's okay. Isla's just concerned. Misguided, but it's coming from a good place. The false sympathy makes my skin crawl. I'm not leaving, I say, lifting my chin. Not this time. For a moment, the room stills. What are you talking about? My mother whispers. I take a breath so deep it trembles. I didn't go to Midwest State. That was a cover. I attended St. James University. Graduated at the top of my class. I've been living in Brighton for 3 years, working at TechCore Analytics as a product analyst. I make 6 figures. I've supported myself entirely since I was 18. Their stunned faces might have been satisfying, had this come under better circumstances. That's impossible, my father stammers. I pull my company badge from my wallet and hand it to him. Call the office. Check my LinkedIn. Look me up. While you were fawning over Tessa, I became someone else. Someone you never noticed. Tessa sinks back into the chair, the reality beginning to seep in. I continue. I'm giving you one last chance to see what's right in front of you. I gather the papers, smoothing out the ones she crushed. This man is not who he says he is. His pattern is consistent. He gets close, gains access to financial accounts, and then vanishes 3 days before the wedding. For the first time, Elliot falters. Just for a split second, the mask slips, a flicker of calculation behind his eyes, before the charm returns. I think we've all heard enough fantasy for one evening, he says, voice cool. Isla, my father's voice booms again, regaining its stern edge. You will leave this house now. I meet his gaze, unflinching. When he disappears with everything you've given him, I say quietly, remember someone tried to stop it. And this time, I won't be the one disappearing. Isla, I won't ask again. Leave, now. My father's voice rang with finality. Authoritative. Absolute. I looked at each of them, Charles's rigid certainty, Marla's torn, trembling loyalty, Tessa's simmering resentment, and Elliot's polished, performative concern. When he disappears with everything you've given him, I said quietly, gathering my laptop and the evidence folders, just remember, someone tried to warn you. I pulled open the front door. It felt heavier than it did when I was 17 and sneaking out to study alone. But this time, I wasn't running. I wasn't hiding. This time I was leaving with the truth they refused to see. Have you ever had to carry the truth alone while the people you loved clung to comfortable lies? Would you walk away? Or fight harder for a family that never listened? I still didn't have the answer. But I knew one thing. Whatever I did next would change everything. Back in Brighton City, 2 days before the wedding, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. I set it face down on the kitchen counter and poured myself a fresh cup of coffee, watching the steam rise into the morning light that filtered through the 15th floor window. The skyline stretched far into the distance, Lake Marnell gleaming blue and still. 15 stories up, and a lifetime away from the family that only noticed me when everything went wrong. I flipped my phone over. 17 missed calls, 23 texts, 5 voicemails. I pressed play on the first. Isla. He's gone. My father's voice cracked, unfamiliar and raw. I had never heard that sound from him before. Elliot disappeared last night. Please call us back. The next voicemail played automatically. The accounts are empty. Everything, even your mother's retirement fund. The commanding tone I'd known my entire life was gone. All that remained was hollow disbelief. The third message was my mother's. The police said, without a written contract, there's not much they can do. They called it a civil matter. Please, Maddie. We need you to come home. She hadn't called me Maddie since I was 10 years old. I sat down at the kitchen table, tracing the rim of my coffee mug with my fingertip. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from Tessa. You were right. I didn't listen. Please help us. The silence of the apartment pressed in around me. The version of me that lived here was calm, grounded, self-reliant. Not the girl who was always trying to prove her worth. I tapped on my contacts and called Vivian, my mentor. The woman who saw my potential long before anyone else did. She picked up on the second ring. You sound troubled, she said gently, instead of hello. They finally believe me, I replied. Now that Elliot's gone, with everything. And now they want your help. I didn't answer right away. I stared out the window at the horizon I'd claimed as my own. What are you considering? Vivian asked softly. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass pane. I don't know. Boundaries aren't walls, she said. They're doors. You control who walks through them. When we hung up, I booked another flight. The second trip home in a single month. But this time, I packed for only 3 days. When the cab pulled into the driveway, the Maple Glen house looked like a ghost of the wedding it had been preparing for. The tent in the backyard was half dismantled. The white chairs were stacked against the fence. The once impeccable flowers now sagged in the summer heat. My mother opened the door before I knocked. Her face was bare of makeup, and in just 2 days, she looked 5 years older. You came, she whispered. Her arms reached slightly for a hug. I didn't move forward, neither did she. Inside, my father was pacing the living room, phone pressed to his ear. He ended the call when he saw me. His eyes darted to the expensive watch on my wrist, then to the designer bag on my shoulder. We thought, perhaps you might be able to help. He cleared his throat. Financially. Just until things are sorted. My mother wrung her hands. What will the Hendersons think? Or the country club? Your father's the treasurer. On the couch, Tessa sat curled in one of my old high school t-shirts, her face blotchy and puffy. I guess she'd pulled it from the back of my childhood closet. If you'd supported me earlier, she mumbled, maybe I would have listened. Her voice didn't hold its usual bite, but the blame was still there. Thinly veiled and familiar. You've always been so negative about him. I took a deep breath and set my bag down on the coffee table. The living room felt smaller than I remembered. The walls still displayed Tessa's dance trophies. Not a single photo or certificate of mine. I can help, I said slowly. But not with everything. My father straightened. Isla, as your father... Let me be clear, I interrupted, calmly holding up one hand. Here's what I can do. I ticked off each item on my fingers. I can help you file proper police reports. I can connect you with a lawyer who specializes in fraud recovery. I can contact a financial advisor to walk you through what comes next. What I can't do, I said, is give you back the money. The silence that followed was thick, stretching between us like a rubber band pulled too tight. My mother finally spoke. But you make 6 figures. You have savings. I looked her in the eye. Yes, I do. And I worked for every cent of it without your support, while you pretended my success didn't exist. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. They could feel the shift. This time I wasn't the child begging to be believed. I was the woman they'd never expected me to become. And I will not sacrifice my financial security, I say, my voice firm, to rescue you from a situation I explicitly warned you about. My father's face darkens, his tone sharp. This family has supported you your entire life. A laugh escapes me, sharp, short, and unexpected. Did you? We put a roof over your head, food on the table. That's the legal minimum, Dad. Tessa unfolds herself from the couch like a wilted paper flower. So that's it? You're just going to walk away now after being right? Is that what matters most to you? Being right? I meet her eyes. There's no venom in mine, only calm. What matters is being respected, being heard. You need me now, Tessa. But you've never wanted me. And that's a difference you'll need to sit with. My mother drops into a chair, hands pressed over her mouth. How can you be so cold? She whispers. The answer slips out before I can stop it. I learned from the experts. And for the first time in this house, they see me. Not as the accessory to someone else's story, not as the quiet shadow. They see a woman who built herself from the scraps they overlooked. These are my boundaries, I say, calm and clear. I'll stay for 3 days. I'll help you navigate this legally. I will not empty my savings. I will not co-sign loans. Those are the terms. My father opens his mouth, then closes it again. When he speaks, his voice is thinner. When did you become this person? When you weren't looking. Is it our duty to help family when they've hurt us? Or is setting boundaries an act of self-respect? What would you demand before helping the ones who only come to you in crisis? My father paces the living room, each step echoing through the floor I once tiptoed across, trying not to be noticed. As head of this family, he starts, I've always made decisions in everyone's best interest. He stops, turns to face me. Right now, we need to show unity. I sit on the edge of the old armchair, same one I used to curl into as a kid with a library book and a flashlight. Back then, I wanted to disappear. Not anymore. My mother fidgets beside him, twisting her wedding ring around her knuckles. Blood is thicker than water, Isla. Surely you understand that now. The weight of their expectations presses down again, but I don't fold. I straighten my spine. You've always believed I thought I was better, I say quietly. Tessa's mascara-streaked face twists. Her voice cracks. Perfect Isla. Fancy job. Big city. You've always looked down on us. I glance at my watch. They've been at this for 27 minutes. The guilt, the manipulation, the quiet pressure they apply like clockwork. They think I'll fold, like I used to. Like the paper dolls Tessa and I played with as kids. She got the perfect dresses. I got the torn scraps. When I was 8, I begin, voice even, I won the district spelling bee. You told me you couldn't come because Dad had an important meeting. My father's eyes shift, but I saw you, at Friendly's, celebrating Tessa's participation ribbon from field day. The room stills. Even the clock in the corner seems to tick louder. In 10th grade, I won state recognition for my science project. The ceremony was the same night as Tessa's choir concert. She sang in the back row. You chose the concert. My mother drops her gaze to her lap. My high school graduation. You left immediately because Tessa had a prom date and needed help with her hair. Silence thickens. The truth lands heavily. Christmas 2020. I bought you each personalized gifts based on real conversations we had that year. You gave me a generic gift card with the wrong name on it. The front door creaks open. Aunt Valerie stands framed in the doorway, clutching her purse like a shield. "I saw it all," she says, her voice trembling but strong. "Every recital you missed, every science fair you ignored. I watched this child wilt while you celebrated her sister." My father's face flushes. "This is family business, Valerie." "I am family," she replies. "And someone in this room needs to acknowledge what's been done to Isla all these years." I rise from the armchair, taller somehow in the space where I once tried to shrink. "I'll help with the house." My voice fills the room, unapologetic. "I'll cover the second mortgage. I'll consolidate the credit card debt." Relief flickers across their faces, faint but unmistakable. "But I won't help with your reputation. I won't pretend Tessa wasn't conned by a man any basic background check would have exposed." Their eyes widen, but I keep going. "I won't lie to the neighbors. I won't join your parade of, 'Look who came home to save the day.'" They wanted a quiet return, a silent bailout, an invisible daughter who would finally play the role they wrote for her. But that version of me? She's long gone, scammed by a man any decent background check would have flagged. I finish quietly. And I won't lie to the neighbors about where the money went. I meet each of their eyes, my father's disbelief, my mother's wounded pride, Tessa's quiet devastation. "I won't attend your community fundraisers or luncheons where you parade me around as the dutiful daughter who swooped in to save the day." My father's jaw tightens. "You don't get to dictate terms in my house." "I do," I reply evenly, when I'm the one with the means to save it. The words taste unfamiliar, sharp and powerful. But they're true. My assistance, I say, comes with protections. Legal protections. The money will be handled through official channels. There will be documentation. You won't have direct access to any of it. I pause, letting the shift in dynamics settle. This is a business transaction, not a family bailout. My mother's eyes go wide. "We're not some charity case." "You're right. You're not. Because charity doesn't come with conditions. This does." I reach for my briefcase, pull out 3 crisp copies of the contract my lawyer drafted, and place them on the coffee table. This outlines the terms of my help. It's a one-time solution, not the start of something ongoing. I continue, calm and composed. "The funds for the second mortgage will be transferred directly to the bank. The credit card debt will be consolidated through a financial advisor I've selected." "This is ridiculous," my father mutters, but his eyes are already scanning the documents. "Page 2, I say, tapping it with my finger. "Acknowledgement that, for years, you consistently favored one child over another. That the emotional neglect in this house had consequences." My mother gasps. "We would never sign something like that." "Then I'll leave. And you can explain to the bank why next month's mortgage payment won't go through." The room falls still. The only sound is Tessa's uneven breathing. My father reaches for his reading glasses, hands trembling as he adjusts them. He reads in silence. The pen hovers above the signature line. "You've become hard," he says. "No," I reply, standing tall. "I've become honest. The world didn't break me. Neither did you. But I'm done pretending." His hand shakes, but the pen moves. He signs. My mother signs next, quietly. Then Tessa. Her signature is slower, the ink slightly smeared. 10 minutes later, the documents are complete. I pull out my phone and text Rachel Winters, my financial advisor. "Proceed with Plan A. Full implementation." Then I make the call. "Miss Winters, it's Isla. We're moving forward. The documents have been signed. You'll receive them shortly." I end the call and turn to face my family. "Rachel specializes in restructuring family debt. She'll contact you tomorrow to start the process. Everything goes through her. Not me." My father opens his mouth to object. "This isn't negotiable," I say before he can speak. "She'll handle the mortgage, the creditors. The money will never touch your accounts. I gather my things. No tearful hugs. No promises to call. No final requests. I hope you find peace with your choices, I say simply, buttoning my coat. On the porch, Aunt Valerie catches up to me. Will you be all right? The late afternoon sun spills across the street where I once waited for the school bus, daydreaming of escape. I already am, I answer. I walk to the rental car, my steps measured, spine straight. In the rearview mirror, the Maple Glen house grows smaller. I don't look back. Some bridges can't be rebuilt. Some bridges shouldn't be. Sunlight streams through the bay windows of my home office. It pools in warm, golden rectangles across the surface of my new maple desk, the one I chose, the one I earned. My Brighton City apartment is gone. I traded it for this sturdy, peaceful craftsman bungalow, with its solid bones and quiet strength. 1 year since I walked away from the wreckage of the Whitaker family. 1 year of building a life that reflects who I've become. The diploma that once hid behind winter coats now hangs centered on the wall. Isla Camille Whitaker, Bachelor of Science, Data Science, summa cum laude. Not hidden, not denied. A chime interrupts the stillness. An incoming video call. Layla, the third student in my mentorship program for first-generation college women, appears on the screen. Her face is radiant with excitement. I got the interview, she says, pushing her dark hair behind her ear. And I used the strategy you taught me. When they asked why I deserved the scholarship more than others, I didn't shrink myself. I didn't apologize. I told them what I'd do with the opportunity. Her smile is wide, confident. Earned. They called an hour ago. I got it. I beam. You didn't just get it, I tell her. You earned it. There's a difference. And I told them exactly what I'd accomplish with it. Layla's smile stretched wide, beaming with pride. They called an hour ago. I got it. I leaned in, smiling back. You earned it, I corrected gently. There's a difference. After the call, I stepped out into my backyard garden. Spring had coaxed the first green shoots from soil I'd spent months nurturing, turning rocky ground into something fertile, something mine. I knelt by the planter box and brushed my fingers along the tender leaves of tomato seedlings. They would grow strong, unlike the withered roots I left behind. On the patio table sat a folded letter from Dr. Chen, my therapist. Her clean, elegant handwriting outlined 1 full year of weekly sessions. Patient demonstrates significant progress in establishing and maintaining healthy boundaries, and in recognizing her self-worth independent of familial validation. I smiled, tucking the letter into a binder I kept for milestones. Not all growth was visible, but this one. I could feel it in every breath I took. Wednesday afternoons were still reserved for the Brighton Community Center, where I taught financial literacy to young women, most of them first-generation students like I once was. Last week, Tanya, a sharp, fast-talking 17-year-old who reminded me painfully of my younger self, had caught something that didn't sit right. I think someone's trying to scam my mom, she'd said. We reviewed the numbers, the pitch, the promise of easy returns. See this? I told her. It doesn't add up. Her hands trembled as she folded the flyer. Then she straightened her spine. I'm going to tell her. Even if she doesn't believe me. My phone buzzed. A message from Aunt Valerie, like clockwork on the first Friday of the month. Your parents are still struggling to refinance the house. Tessa's working part-time at the local bank. She's attending therapy twice a month. No contact attempts from any of them. I read the words with a steady heart. The boundary held. On both sides. The garden timer chimed softly. Time to prepare for tonight. The community center auditorium filled with applause as I crossed the stage. The award was cool and heavy in my hands, glass and metal etched with the name of the mentorship program I founded. Recognition for its impact on first-generation college students. I scanned the crowd. No empty chairs waiting for parents who never showed. Instead, I saw Dr. Chen in the third row, nodding with quiet pride. Mrs. Grayson, my neighbor and fellow gardener, clapped with open joy. The same woman who dropped off heirloom tomato seedlings like they were treasures. My coworkers were there too, smiling at me not for being a survivor, but for being a leader. And friends, real ones. People who asked how I was doing and waited to hear the answer. When I started this program, I told the audience, I thought I was helping others find what I never had. I looked out over the sea of faces, but I've learned that worth doesn't come from applause or approval. It grows from within. When we stop shrinking. When we finally see ourselves. Back home, I opened my laptop to finalize the launch of something deeply personal. The Whitaker Visibility Scholarship, named for no one but myself. A scholarship for academically gifted students whose achievements had gone unseen for too long. The essay question read, describe a time when your contributions went unrecognized and how you maintained your sense of value. A notification popped up, an email from Sasha, the very first mentee I ever had. You saw me when no one else did, she wrote. That changed everything. As twilight settled, I moved through the garden with careful attention, watering each plant with intention. The tomato vines, now climbing confidently up their trellises, stood beside rows of peppers, zucchini, and herbs. Each one planted, chosen, tended by hands that had learned their own strength. The wind rustled through the leaves, a soft chorus of encouragement. I paused beside the rose bush I'd pruned nearly to the root last fall. At the time, it had felt almost cruel, but now, from its bare stalks, new green growth had begun to push through. Stronger, wiser. Some things grow better when cut back, I whispered to the leaves, a smile tugging at my lips. And as I looked over the life I had built, thriving, rooted, visible, I finally understood. I hadn't walked away from my family. I'd walked toward myself.